This is Steve Zeltzer with WorkWeek, and the struggles that are going on with the trade war and the use of trade war to politically manipulate other countries is actually growing in relationship to Canada and, of course, Brazil. And joining us today is Fabio Bosco. He's a member of the Transit Workers Union in São Paulo and also with Conlutas, which is an independent trade union federation. Welcome to our show, Fabio.
Thank you for the invitation, Steve.
So, Fabio, the struggle now from the United States and Trump is to force Brazil to release Bolsonaro. And Trump now apparently is using the trade war to politically manipulate countries and bend to the political agenda of him and his support for Bolsonaro and other fascists around the world. So, what's going on in Brazil and what's happening with this attack on Brazil?
Look, Steve, let me tell you, the general feeling among the Brazilians is that Trump administration decided to impose these 50% tariffs, not only because of Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro is on the verge of going to jail, you see, but not only because of him, but there are also the interests of the big techs that are against the regulations that are under discussion here in Brazil that might pose some taxes on them. And there is also another issue, which is free transfer of money. Here in Brazil, we have something that is coordinated by the central bank that allow all Brazilians to transfer money without paying any kind of tax, you see? So, currently, other places like Buenos Aires, Portugal, and Miami, they are joining this. And so the banks, they are not interested in that. So the most visible reason for Trump administration to carrying out this trade war against Brazil has to do with Bolsonaro, but there are other hidden agenda behind this backlash. And what happened? I can tell you that it backfired, Steve, because Trump targeted Brazil, but he shot Bolsonaro. What was happening just before this announcement by Trump administration? The Lula administration here in Brazil was on the low, you see? And when Trump decided to carry out this trade war against Brazil, Lula, the ratings went up. Lula is becoming popular. And now this decision of Trump to resort to U.S. law called Magnitsky Law and to target one member of the Brazilian Supreme Court who is in charge of the trial of Bolsonaro and all the coup plotters made this man, this judge, a popular personality here in Brazil. You see? So it's curious how all these actions by Trump administration brings a feeling of anti-imperialist perspective among the working class and the people in general.
Well, the people that supported Bolsonaro, and he had support in the United States for his attempted coup, that coup took place. I mean, the insurrection took place in the United States, was unsuccessful. What does that mean politically in Brazil, the growth of fascist and right-wing forces in relationship to what Trump is now doing?
Look, Steve, this phenomenon of the far right becoming more popular here in Brazil, we have been dealing with this for maybe 10 years. You see, the far right is on the rise. And Bolsonaro administration, when he was elected, many managed to put together things that were different. You see, there are people that are they would like to have a military dictatorship in Brazil, so they are together with religious conservative people. They are together with mafias. They are together with agribusiness. He put together different social groups in order to make this, let's say, this rise of the far right. And the election of Trump in the US, of course, make this movement stronger. In this case of the trade war, it backfired, you see. So at this moment, the Bolsonaro group, they are in the defensive, trying to explain why they are doing that. And so they are in a difficult position at this moment. But before this trade war that Trump started, they were moving upwards, you see.
And not Bolsonaro, but Lula and his government have said that the development of BRICS is an alternative to IMF, United States, and the US control of the world economy, WTO. What is that perspective, and what is the reality of that?
Well, I think that the BRICS will not be this alternative itself. What's happening is that China capitalism is on the rise, and they are disputing in terms of trade, of economics with the US across the world, you see. And China is taking advantage of BRICS to try to put around them an alternative to the US hegemony. But the BRICS is a very contradictory block of countries. You see, you have countries that are closer to the US, you have countries that are closer to China. Here, the government talks a lot about BRICS becoming this alternative in some way, but I feel that in reality, what Brazilian administration is trying to do is to try to get advantage from this dispute between the US and China to make better bargaining for the Brazilian exports and this kind of stuff, you see. That's my feeling.
And what has been the effect on the working class in Brazil? Because, of course, the United States now is facing competition from China, as you say, and Brazil can export to China and other countries. But what is the situation of the working class in Brazil, and what is the effect of Chinese investments in Brazil in relationship to the working class and the unions?
Look, when Trump started this tariff stuff, it's something curious happened among the working class, because the working class suddenly started to see the Chinese capitalists as something more friendly to them and to Brazil than the US one. I don't know if you understand what I tell you. Suddenly China becomes something popular as well. Despite of the fact we are labor activists, we know that the labor conditions in China are very exploitative, and when they come to Brazil, and there are companies coming to Brazil, they are taking advantage of the privatizations. They are imposing new levels of exploitation against the working class. So they are not better. I feel they are more or less the same, you see, Steve. But in this moment, the China is, let's say, something sympathetic to Brazil, and this is helped a lot by the fact that the majority of the left-wing groups in Brazil, they love China. I think they think China is the new leadership for the socialists across the world, despite of the fact it's a totally capitalist country. So I think that this is the feeling, the average feeling among the Brazilian working class regarding China at this moment.
Now, China says it's developing socialism with Chinese characteristics. What is it doing to bring socialism to Brazil since it's a major investor in Brazil? You're saying that basically they're making capitalist investments and they're supporting privatization of the Brazilian economy. Is that what's going on in Brazil?
Yeah, that's exactly what's going on here. They took part, for instance, in the privatization of the railway here in the western part of São Paulo, and it's hell. The workers are being dismissed. The working conditions are very bad. The prices did not go down. There is no benefit. It's privatization. Uh, so I definitely cannot agree with the ones that believes that this Chinese imperialist drive in Brazil is something better than any other. You see, be the US one, the European one, the Japanese one, they play more or less the same cards, you see. And at this moment, because of their rivalry, they are imposing tougher conditions on the working class, all of them.
And concretely, what does that mean? Lula is a social democrat. He believes that you can bring socialism through a capitalist economy. How has that affected the working class, the unions, and the working class in Brazil?
Look, Lula does not present himself as a socialist. Okay, he supports openly a market economy, but he says that it must be fair. You cannot have hunger. You see, he tried to humanize capitalism. That's the perspective that he plays. And regarding the Brazilian working class, the situation in Brazil is not good, you see, for the working class, Steve, I can tell you. But the labor movement, the majority of the labor movement and social movements are supportive of Lula because they believe that it's either Lula or the far right, and the far right is more dangerous. So the majority of the organized labor movement and social movements, they are around Lula and supporting his candidacy for the elections that will be held next year.
And the unions that are supporting Lula, what are they doing to fight privatization? Has there been any national campaign to stop the privatization by the Lula government?
Look, they do symbolic stuff. They are not challenging this politics. And it's something like this. For instance, the government is going to privatize the subway in the Northeast, Recife. The union there, they must do something. But CUT, as Labor Federation, they don't. You understand? So they leave it isolated. But the local union, they try to do something at least to join the agenda of the government, which is, okay, let it be privatized, but we will take care of the workers to have some benefits preserved, or if they are dismissed, they get some kind of deal. You understand? It's a kind of humane privatization, let's say. So they work a lot on this agenda, but that's for the working class and the people that depends on these public services. That's a disgrace, you see. That's a disgrace.
What is the inflation rate in Brazil? Is it going up?
It's between 4 to 5%. At this moment, it's not going up. It's stabilized at this moment. And maybe the tariffs by the US will make coffee and meat cheaper.
And the privatization of Pemex, the oil industry in Brazil, there have been strikes there of the oil workers. What's happening with privatization of the oil industry in Brazil?
Well, the privatization, the oil industry, they are being made in a different fashion. You see, Steve, they are making partnership with international oil companies to come to Brazil to drill Brazilian oil. So the unions are opposed to that, but there is no big struggle against it. They managed to impose this way of oil exploration in Brazil many years ago, and it's going on. But both the labor movement that is independent from the government and the labor movement that supports the government, both of them agrees that that's dangerous for Brazil. Brazil lose money, and so it's a problem, and they are opposed. But we don't have strikes or something more powerful in order to stop it.
And the global movement against the genocide in Gaza and Israel, there's a movement obviously in Brazil to support the Palestinians against the genocide. What is happening with that movement? And also, what is the relationship of Lula to Israel? Are they breaking off relations? Are they stopping all trade with Israel?
Lula administration, since day one of the genocide, they do something like this. They criticize the genocide and they criticize the Palestinian resistance. You see, they have one foot in each boat, let's say. But Lula made strong denouncing against the genocide, but the decisions are modest. They exist, but they are modest, facing what Brazil is doing. For instance, Steve, Brazil is exporting oil to Israel. Today, Brazil is the fourth largest exporter of oil to Israel. So the labor unions are doing a beautiful work. They are putting pressure on the government to stop it, but the government did not stop. So that's the reality we have here. The trade relations and the diplomatic relations are kept, but there are some symbolic actions by the government that that makes Lula maybe one of the most popular presidents among the Palestinians. You see, the Palestinians look to Lula as someone that's on their side, but I can tell you that what Lula do is try to have a strong condemnation of the genocide, a wording that is strong, but the actions do not follow the same level. So he took two decisions these days. One was to fully endorse the South Africa initiative in the International Court of Justice, you see, to condemn Israel for genocide. So that's something positive, late but positive. And the other one is there is an association that's called IHRO, which they decided on a definition for anti-Semitism that puts anyone who raises any criticism against Israel as anti-Semitic. So Lula, Brazil endorsed that before, but now last week, Brazil decided to withdraw from this organization as a full member. Now they are an observer, and they are criticizing this definition. So that's good, because many of us, I myself included, are being attacked as for this definition, just because we are criticizing and fighting against the genocide that's going on in Palestine. So, Steve, look, Brazil is not one of the centers of the solidarity to Palestine. It's not nothing like the Europe or the US, but still there is an active movement here in all capitals, and they are managed to put pressure on the government. We had the largest demonstration ever had in Brazil for Palestine with 30,000 people in São Paulo 1 month ago. And some important singers, they joined a manifesto asking Lula to break the diplomatic and economic relations with Israel. So I can tell you the solidarity movement here in Brazil is on the rise, is in its best moment when the Palestinians are in this, that is one of the worst situations that any people is under across the world.
And do you think that's one of the contradictions of BRICS? Because BRIC countries, for example, South Africa, is also trading with Israel, providing Israel with coal. The Zim ships go into the port of Durban in South Africa. And it seems like in Brazil, the same thing is going on. Israel is trading with Brazil, and Brazil has not shut down the embassy, has not kicked the Israelis out. If they say the Israeli government is committing genocide, why do they have relations with the Israeli government?
If the BRICS is a very bad example in terms of solidarity towards Israel. Look, China is the largest partner, trade partner of Israel, largest, above the US. That's not possible. Russia still is one of the main exporters of oil to Israel. India, recently, they held a formal meeting with Israel in New Delhi to keep military, trade, cultural agreements. What's that, you see? So the main countries of the BRICS, all of them are keeping the diplomatic and trade relations with Israel. So unfortunately, what I can tell you, Steve, the genocide does not stop in Gaza because all countries keep the relations with Israel. You see, all countries. And so they struggle for BDS to stop the funding for Israel, weapons for Israel. It's something critical, and the labor movement should take more steps in order to guarantee that no weapons arrives in the Zionist hands.
And the development of a mass workers' party. Obviously, you don't feel that Lula, that party represents the working class. Is there any united front effort to build a mass workers' party in Brazil so that there's a working class political alternative?
Unfortunately, Steve, at this moment, the broad majority of the left-wing forces, they don't see any perspective outside the ranks of Lula. You see, unfortunately, few organizations, they believe that it's necessary to have, let's say, a left-wing alternative to Lula. And even some that talk about that, they are inside of the framework, the alliance that Lula is building for the next elections. They are in the supporting Lula in parliament. So this development, unfortunately, in Brazil, it's more difficult because this dispute between the far right and Lula makes the space to the left smaller. But there are still organizations that have this stand. And let's see, if I believe that if the workers' movement, they go to another level of struggle, you see, this will open a lot of possibilities to build this left-wing alternative to Lula. You see, at this moment, it's not like this. Just to give you one number, before the pandemic, we had something like 2,000 strikes per year in Brazil. After the pandemic, this level is around 1,000, and mainly public workers. You see, the private sector workers, when they go on strike, in general, short strikes or strikes for lack of payment, you see, things like this. It's different from the moment that we're living before the pandemic. But because of the economic situation is not good, at some point this will change, you see? So we have to follow and to make the efforts to help this new wave of struggles to emerge.
And what do people think in Brazil about Trump and about the government in the United States? How do they look at it, the working class and the people of Brazil?
At this moment, the popularity of Trump is very low because they see him as a kind of imperialist dictator that do whatever he wants. He does not care with the other countries or the poor or the immigrants. The issue of immigrants is also a big issue here in Brazil, because look, there are many Brazilians that they don't have papers and they are in the US, and so the Brazilians feel that it's not fair what's happening there. You see, Steve, this very aggressive and shameful way of deporting people. Maybe if they did in a hidden way, kind of Obama did. You see, Obama was deporting thousands of immigrants, right? But
It's called the
he
chief
did in a
deporter.
more,
Subtle.
isn't, yeah.
It's called the chief
But
deporter.
but Trump do a lot of noise, and so the Brazilians do not feel represented by these kind of actions against the immigrants, definitely. So the popularity of Trump at this moment in Brazil is very low.
And the effect of these tariffs, what effect do you think they will have if they impose the 50% tariff on Brazil?
Look, they are bargaining, you see. So yesterday, the Trump administration made some exceptions, you see, around
Orange juice,
700
orange juice.
orange juice, yes, orange juice, planes, oil. These are the three big ones that will have no extra tariffs, you see. But others like meat and coffee, yes, they still have 50%. But there are many other products. Around 43% of all Brazilian exports to the US are out of the 50% tariff. You understand? So it's kind of half-half. So it's not so strong as it was 2 days ago. And the effect is, well, certainly there will be more unemployment in Brazil. At the same time, probably the price of meat and coffee will go down a bit, at least. And Brazil we have less hard currency, you see, for for international trade. So
Won't that strengthen the relationship with China and other countries?
yes, well, be sure that the Brazilian government will try to sell it to whoever agrees to buy it, you see. And China is today is the largest partner of Brazil is China, you see. The US has more investments in Brazil, but China has more trade, both in terms of exports and imports.
And United States and Trump's threat to invade Panama and his intervention in other countries. Is there any movement in Brazil against US imperialist intervention in Central and Latin America?
Look, um, there is a general feeling against that, but we don't have movement. But this 50% tariff made the labor movement and some social movements to call demonstrations against the US imperialism. Tomorrow we will be in front of the US consulate here in São Paulo, all labor federations together. So there is these developments are new because they are deeply connected with the recent decision around this 50% tariff, you see. But even before, there was a feeling of opposition to this stuff that Panama is mine, Greenland, Canada, but there was no demonstrations, you see, street actions or something like this.
So tomorrow there'll be a rally of all the unions in Brazil at the
Yes, yes.
U.S. consulate. Now, also the question of Malay and the support of Trump of Malay and that government in Brazil, which is in Argentina rather, which is privatizing the healthcare, privatizing education. There have been mass protests in Argentina against the government, the Malay government. What's the relationship of the movement, the working class movement in Brazil to the struggle in Argentina?
Look, there is a lot of actions of solidarity between the two working classes, you see, because we are neighbors. So there is a lot of information on what's going on there. And they have also a lot of information on what's going on here. So there is a feeling of solidarity. And when they every time the Argentinian labor decides to hold a general strike or something like this, a national protest, in Brazil, we go to the Argentinian consulate in São Paulo and some other cities. So this is very, that's all something that comes from other times, you see, Steve, and they are kept up to now, these connections between the two working classes.
And the AFL-CIO, the Solidarity Center here, which is funded by the US government, it's received over $1 billion. It gets $70 million a year. It was involved in supporting the military coup in Brazil and the military coup in Argentina were supported by the AFL-CIO and the CIA. Do you have any fear that the United States, US imperialism will try to intervene militarily or with the coup both in Brazil and Argentina?
Look, Steve, we must be alert all the time because maybe they will not bring troops, you see? When there was the military coup in Brazil, the US did not bring troops despite of the fact that they put 2 military boats here on the Brazilian coast, but they did not intervene, you see? But they organized everything. The US ambassador in Brazil was the guy that put together a section of the army, the leaders, the generals of the army, together with bourgeois politicians, and they did it in a very organized fashion. You see, they took more than a year, almost 2 years to prepare everything from when they started. When the US decided that it was necessary to change the government here, they took nearly between 1 and 2 years to carry out the coup d'etat, which was a successful coup d'etat on their point of view, of course. And it was a disaster for us, for the working class and the left-wing forces. So I think that we must keep our eyes open because this might happen. Definitely, the US could try to build connections in order to help a coup d'etat, like what we had in Brazil. You see, recently when Bolsonaro tried to do to carry out a coup d'etat, it was not under Trump administration, and Biden administration did not support it, not in principle, you see, but they did not support it. And so it was not possible for it to succeed. But for instance, if Biden decided to help it, and to help it is just to say, look, I support it and give some message, then maybe the Brazilian bourgeoisie would jump as a majority on these cards and there would be a military coup in Brazil. So it's very dangerous.
And there's a very important film that's come out, a Brazilian film about the coup and the reactions, and that film, although it's popular, it doesn't really talk about the role of the United States in the Brazilian coup.
Yes.
So, but the United States was involved. Okay, well, I want to thank you very much for joining us, Fabio. And obviously, American workers need to link up with the Brazilian working class in opposing this trade war and also for linking up workers in Brazil with workers in the United States, fighting together against the rise of fascism and against imperialism. So thanks for joining us on WorkWeek.
Thank you for having me, Steve.